Hello, hi, how are you? Welcome on into another podcast by George. Got a big shoe today, as Ed Sullivan used to say. My God, I'm dating myself right off of the top. People that remember how that strange, unusual guy used to talk. It's amazing the people that were in the early stages of media, um, and how they got to such prominence. And when you look back on it, my God, how'd that guy ever get to be who he was? Ed Sullivan. Anyway, what a strange beginning that is. You never know what's going to pop into my head, folks. I hope you saw the promo for the show, what we are going to talk about today. And it's this: the Iowa Caucus clown car, driver wanted. And it's on the heels, or it's because of the first, really serious presidential 2024 Iowa poll has been released by the Des Moines Register and Friends, all copyrights assigned and that type of thing. We're going to talk about that. And then, of course, I don't know where I'm going to come down. Take that, make that smaller. Where I'm going to stand when it comes to these elections. We talked to Dr. Steffen W. Schmidt on the show, and the line that I use with him is, "You may not like politics," and I'm getting to where I like it a hell of a lot less than I ever did, but it likes you. I mean, you got to pay attention. You got to look at it. It affects all of us, but my God, what a mess it has become. And here's the graphic that I like to use for the GOP, particularly 2016. That was some nomenclature that found its way into the American lexicon, and it is the clown car. And that is what the Iowa poll was about. And, well, we're going to get into all of that, but let's bring his graphic up on screen here. Dr. Steffen W. Schmidt earned a PhD in public law and government from Columbia University, New York. He's a founding and sustaining member of LULAC Council 307 in Iowa, one of the oldest Hispanic community and leadership organizations. He also served as the chair of the Iowa Governor's Spanish-Speaking Commission. He's co-author of at least 10 books, including this one that I have off my left side here. Let me go full screen so you can have a look here. It is American Government and Politics Today, and I reference it all the time. I just looked in it to get the definition of a libertarian, because there's a libertarian candidate that we might mention that was out politicking a little bit. But you can see mine's getting a little thumb worn. But get that book, American Government and Politics Today. That's the textbook that he taught with. I mean, God, 50 years almost in the classroom, and you'll be a smart guy when it comes to American politics, just like he is. Let's welcome him on in and say hi to Doc Politics. Hi, Doc.
Good morning.
Hey, thanks for coming on in here. We're going to talk about this Iowa poll from the Des Moines Register, but I kind of wanted to zoom out to start with here while we're waiting for people to come on and talk a little bit about the Iowa State Fair, because we've talked about it a lot on the show. It still is a significant thing when it comes to politics, but maybe right at the top here, I get the sense of the feeling looking at coverage that we're not covering things as early or as intensive as we have in the past several cycles. And I think it is because everybody's waiting with bated breath, waiting for the other shoe to drop when it comes to Trump and his legal issues. So the state fair, yeah, they got a little bit of coverage, but God, they used to swarm that thing. And of course, the Iowa caucuses have changed. But I think it's all about Trump. Do you get that sense?
Yeah, I mean, I do. I must say, I've had, almost maybe more media questions about this year and about the Iowa State Fair and about, deep fried food on a stick, which people still find amusing and want to know what my favorite one is. I've been in Florida and Georgia and Virginia and South and North Carolina, Delaware, Massachusetts, New Hampshire, Rhode Island. And I try to, just informally talk to people, and, they're all pretty nervous about the election this year, I must say. If you're saying the state fair isn't getting the coverage, there is certainly concern about where this is going to go, given where we are now.
Well, I like to call it the silly season, and it's well underway. The state fair is kind of the launching pad for that. And I wanted to go to this article again because I think this is, I talk about The Guardian. Now, you got to watch The Guardian. I like a lot of their coverage, particularly when they're looking at us, because if you want to know what's wrong with you, you probably are not the best source. Don't be looking in the mirror. Somebody from the outside should be looking at you. And the Guardian's very good at that. Now, conversely, when it comes to foreign affairs and, issues like that, you don't want to look at the Guardian because they have less freedom of the press in England. A lot of people don't realize that than we do. So they're a little bit more guarded at the Guardian with some of that type of coverage than we are. But let me take a look at this here. Get this to where I can bring it up on screen to read it. Presidential aspirants make the pilgrimage to Des Moines, and a sense of America as a nation sunk in a political depression is what the Guardian says. Donald Trump held aloft a pork chop on a stick. That's what the doc was talking about. I mean, that's a state fair, man. Ron DeSantis and children rode bumper cars and a Ferris wheel, played carnival games, and ate snow cones and ice cream. Vivek Ramaswamy, we're going to talk about this guy. Rapped Lose Yourself by Eminem. Marianne Williamson recalled her days as a cabaret singer. I didn't know that. And Mike Pence said he was hoping to renew his acquaintance with a cow named Chippy. I mean, this is just how dumb all this stuff is. But for all the sunshine, the opening weekend, this was last week of this year's fair, did little to dispel a sense of America as a nation sunk in a political depression. It was difficult to find fans of Joe Biden. While Trump drew the biggest crowd, plenty of Iowans said they were eager to move on from the former president. Some of the most passionate and sizable support was for radical outsiders such as Robert Kennedy Jr. and this Vivek Ramaswamy guy, suggesting discontent with the status quo and yearning for disruptors, no matter how unorthodox or outrageous. These laments for the past pointed to malaise in the present. For Democrats, the choice is between an 80-year-old whose son is the subject of a special counsel investigation, a self-help author with no experience in elected office, and a vaccine conspiracy theorist who has won praise from Steve Bannon and other far-right extremists. For Republicans, the runaway leader in the opinion polls is twice impeached and facing 78 criminal counts in 3 separate court cases. And there could be a 4th criminal case. This was before there was a 4th criminal case, and there is against him within days. I mean, my God. His principal rival is running even further to the right and has become embroiled in the debate over whether slavery had upsides. And Ramaswamy, whose youthful energy and talk of revolution could appeal to a new generation, speaks of a climate change agenda as a hoax while voting to drill, frack, and burn coal like never before. He also vowed to shut down the Federal Bureau of Investigation. Okay, I hate to talk too much when we've got the doc on the line here. I mean, that's a kind of a cynical outsider's perspective. Again, coming from the Guardian, looking at us, they can look at themselves also. But Doc, that is kind of the way that I look at it. That's how I feel about politics today, presidential politics in this electoral field.
Yeah, what you have to, I got interviewed by The Guardian, which was a big honor because,
it's big, yeah.
A pretty serious paper. And I tried to explain stuff to them. And what I explained was that you have to get attention. This is an era of media and of, 60 seconds. People don't pay attention to anything that's longer than that. And so people have to stand on their head and eat, deep fried things that you normally would not eat, even if they weren't deep fried. Of course, some of them are tasty. I mean, some of them are wonderful food. And the French are very jealous of the Iowa State Fair for the, gourmet quality of things. Deep fried butter, for example, they don't have that in France and they feel very deprived. So you get a lot of attention. And that's what the Iowa State Fair is. And the Iowa caucuses, to some extent, are also a media event. Everybody forgets. This was said 49 years ago by a Drake professor, a colleague of mine. The Iowa State caucuses are a media event. They are not where you get delegates to get nominated at the national convention. They are where you attract a lot of media. And because the Iowa Democratic caucuses were so difficult to understand, right? Very difficult. The media from all over the world swarms to Iowa. And this year they're we don't know about the Democrats, and I had a career at Iowa State every 4 years of spending 2 or 3 days at least in Des Moines, um, explaining to international media what how this works. And so it's propaganda, it is advertising, it is buzz. You're showing a slide now that Biden 2024, whatever. Yeah, that may be the case, but you mentioned some, who want to do spectacular things and who reject vaccines and want to, maybe we'll talk about this a little bit later, maybe even go back to foreign policy, back Teddy Roosevelt and before that. Uh, so it's a way to get attention, and we have to see it as that. It may be not a clown car, but it's a variety show. Okay. And I love the Iowa State Fair. We showed horses there for 70 years. No, I didn't, but we had horses. We showed them there for 50 years. But my friends who died, shortly after, loved the state fair for the animal things and the horse shows and stuff. And then it became very political in 72 or 4. And in 64, when an unknown governor from a small state that you would have laughed at, I mean, right? Became the number 2 at the Iowa caucuses, and then got the nomination and became president. So you never know what's going to happen. And Swami might get, a big bump. And I call him Swami because I can never remember the first part of it, and I get it all wrong. So, he might break through. He might become, he's a good speaker. Your mic is off, so I can't hear you.
I was going to say, it's funny the way things go around and come around. I remember when Tulsi was just taken apart by the people on the right, particularly when she was considered to be on the left because she was a Hindu. I mean, whatever. Well, that's who this Ramaswamy guy is. That's where that name came from. And he's beloved by some of the more extreme elements of the right. In the meantime, Tulsi Gabbard has circled around and she's on Fox, and now she's a darling of the right. I mean, it's, politics, Doc. Well, like you, it's strange bedfellows. Yeah, it goes up and down. I want to continue here with the Guardian because they've got an interesting perspective on a guy that caused, some ripples at the Iowa State Fair. And again, the fair, why is it so? Well, it's the largest gathering of people in Iowa, maybe for the entire year in aggregate, over 1 million people, at the Iowa State Fair. That's a big deal. So it kind of gets an outsized role in forming opinions when it comes to these politics. But it says here RFK Jr. draws quite a crowd. What does it mean for 2024? Wearing a Robert Kennedy Jr. campaign t-shirt, Kevin O'Keefe found there was standing room only as the candidate introduced as Bobby Kennedy walked on a sun-baked stage decked with hay bales to whoops and applause. And Doc's seen all this, and so have I before. His campaign chairman, Dennis Kucinich, held up a map as Kennedy rallied against proposed pipelines, or railed against proposed pipelines that would run through Iowa to transport liquefied carbon dioxide away from ethanol plants for burial underground. It was a retro 20th century presentation, but more locally targeted than many candidates offered. Yeah, there's some savvy there. That was a smart move on their part. His uncle, Ted Kennedy, was once floored by the simple question, why do you want to be president? Well, this Kennedy does have an answer for that one. I'm running for president because I feel like I'm losing my country, and because I feel like the Democratic Party is going in a bad direction. In particular, and it's become the party of war. The Ukraine war was an unnecessary war. He means the Democratic Party, the DNC he's talking about here, but there's a caveat. He's running within that party. He's part of the Democratic Party. He has an historic long role in the Democratic Party. So exactly what is he getting at here? It's become a party of censorship. It's become a party of pugnacious, neocon-driven foreign policy and a Wall Street-driven domestic policy. Those are all the opposite of the Democratic Party that I grew up with. So I'm running to bring the party back to its traditional values. Wait a minute. I'm running to bring the party back to its traditional values, Doc. That sentence should have ended, I'm running to be the next president of the United States, but it doesn't end that way. The question for you is why?
Well, it's a bunch of BS. The son of one of the richest families, oligarchs in the United States,
Yes, yes.
now trying to break loose and pretend that he is for the poor people and for climate and all that. I mean, the Kennedys are still one of the richest families in this country, and it's all, if people just look through that and remember that, they'll laugh at him. Yeah, yes, maybe you can break free, from that and become somebody else. But when was the Democratic Party, not the party of FDR? Was he wealthy? Franklin Delano
Oh,
Roosevelt?
yeah.
Let me see. Yeah, pretty rich. Jimmy Carter, was probably the exception.
It
And then,
wasn't poor. I mean, they were successful
yeah,
farm owners down there. Yeah.
yeah, and
I,
Bill Clinton was the exception.
yes, that's true. He was not
But
rich. He is
this,
now.
I have friends, actually good friends in Massachusetts who love the Kennedys, and therefore say they're going to vote for him because they love the Kennedys. So there you go. It can rub off, and it's nostalgia. It is celebrity. You said a huge crowd showed up for him
Yes.
at the state fair. I went to the state fair back in the early 70s, maybe. And I think there was one place where there was a large lady with a big beard, and everybody went over there to look, and it was
Cost
incredible.
a buck.
They were not going to vote for her for governor or president, but they showed up and were there and were interested. The fact that a bunch of people show up, doesn't necessarily mean anything for the caucuses, which we don't know what the Democrats are going to do, because they seem to be a party unable to make any decisions. If you're going to stick it to the national DNC, which I personally think they should do,
Oh, yeah.
tell the DNC, shut up. This is a state issue. This is not a country run out of Washington, D.C., and our party isn't run out of Washington, D.C. We do the caucuses. It gives people a chance to participate and meet neighbors. And I don't think they should have a mailed-in ballot, because it's setting New Hampshire, where I am today, on fire. New Hampshire says, no, you mail in ballots. That's called a primary. It's not a caucus. They should just go back to what has worked since 1972 or 4, and it is a circus. It is a place where the media comes. It is a place where the candidates can tap dance and do the soft shoe and sing a little song and say all kinds of things and eat all kinds of weird food, but that's okay. It calls attention to them. It's not a local event. Anyone who thinks that the Iowa caucuses are a local event, I told you the states that I've been in, all the way from the closest to Cuba that you can be in the United States. I can see Cuba from my house, and all the way up the coast. Everybody's talking about the caucuses and who's going there and what they're going to do, and the large pig, and it's not just the butter cow this year. There's celebrities being carved into butter. It's wonderful spectacle, and let's just look at it as something fun, and calls attention to politics, even though it's kind of nutty politics. Let's accept it for what it is. It's a great event, and the Democrats are sourpusses in whining about it and saying, well, we don't know what we're going to do. No, the DNC is going to take away our delegates if we have, and we're not a diverse enough party. Do you think mailing in ballots in Iowa, mostly white Iowa, is going to make the result more diverse?
Yeah.
No, give me a break. I mean, if you want Iowa to be more diverse, you're going to have to bring in more people from places besides Germany and Scandinavia and, Sweden and Norway and other places in Europe. And there are lots of Hispanics, and the Black population is growing, and there are all kinds of groups in the state. It's not a diverse state. So don't try to make the caucuses really diverse, because it's just not a diverse state. And mailing in the ballots, people before were driven by their family members. We drove some people to a caucus one time who didn't have a way to get there. People took care of each other and tried to bring people to the caucuses on caucus night. And it's a great event, and just keep doing it. Otherwise, this is the last year for the Democrats are in huge trouble. I mean, they've tanked in Iowa. Let's do something that works and move on. And yes, of course, Ramaswamy has been singing songs by rappers and which got him attention. He got media on every single medium in the country.
Yeah, he knows how to get attention. Let me play this clip real quick. People may not have seen this. This for me, I mean, this put a shiver up my spine. This was him talking at an event at the Nixon Library or something. Watch it. This guy's good with the media. Yeah. And you think that doesn't work? Well, think Ronald Reagan, think Donald Trump. I mean, this guy's good on camera. I mean, he's young. I mean, he's got a lot of things going for him. And the Republicans, surprisingly, you talked about the Democrats with the Kennedys. The Republicans seem to be predisposed to picking these people with, on-stage presence and Hollywood backgrounds. Check this guy out, Vivek Ramaswamy.
The North Star of my foreign policy will be the modern Monroe Doctrine, combined with Nixon's doctrine. The Nixon doctrine was that other nations have to be the first protectors of their own national security. I agree with that. We will revive that, and I combine that with the modern Monroe Doctrine, a doctrine that we will re-implement under my watch as U.S. President, which says that if you're a foreign nation, you do not mess with the United States of America on our own home soil. You do not test us on our waters or in the Western Hemisphere. And if you do, you will have hell to pay for it. No Chinese spy balloons flying over half the United States. No Chinese spy bases off the southeast coast of the United States. No Chinese manufactured fentanyl in the hands of Mexican drug cartels waging a modern opium war on the United States of America. But it also means that we will not fight somebody else's war if they're not actually defending their own territory either.
Oh, God. I mean, he starts talking about that Monroe Doctrine and all that stuff. The odd part about it is, Doc, his most fierce supporters, and he's small potatoes at this point still. Did you see that shot of the crowd that were there watching him? I mean, we're talking geriatrics there. We're talking about folks that are older than me and the doc almost. That's who he appeals to. But my God, that strikes fear and trepidation in the heart of a lefty like me.
Well, yes, and it got your attention, and you're right. Yeah. He's a good speaker.
Yes,
a good speaker. And we have a fentanyl crisis, as I said, I happen to be in New Hampshire right now. The fentanyl crisis here is horrible and out of control. And, I don't think we're doing much about it. Nobody else has come up with a good solution. And so, I can understand why, his resonates with people. And the Chinese have been probing our waters, the way we probe theirs and our airspace. And that's the waving the flag, which you have to do when you're running for president, I guess, because, we are all worried about North Korea and Iran and,
and China. I mean, that's who he's
China's number one right now. And so it's called red meat. George.
Yeah, it is. That was red meat for sure.
Vegetarian like yourself,
I don't eat red meat. Yeah.
And beans and Brussels sprouts and I don't know those other little green things. Red meat must not appeal, but red meat appeals to the voters, and he threw red meat right at him. It's better than a MAGA hat, he threw it right at him. And the old people, what are you saying? Old. I'm old.
Yeah, so am I. That's what I mean. Yeah, but he's a young guy, but it looks like his constituency is older. Yeah.
In Iowa, rural, older, small town, of course,
Yeah. Well,
So
that's true. That is who we are. Yeah.
it's interesting to see. Monroe Doctrine is pretty obsolete, and
Modern Monroe. Yeah.
largely it didn't work, and even at the time. Cuba is now a socialist country still. Embargoes, blockades don't work because
Sanctions didn't work. Yeah.
don't work. Nicaragua, we tried a modern Monroe Doctrine with Daniel Ortega and the Contras in there trying to defeat them. And in the end, he got elected president, and Daniel Ortega and his wife, the vice president, are now in charge of the country, even though we spent tens of millions of dollars on that Monroe Doctrine trying to stop him. Boy, I'll never forget that period, with, Ollie North and, sending a key-shaped cake to the Iranians to get them to do something. Most people voting in the Republican caucuses, maybe have never heard of the Monroe Doctrine. We don't teach much of that history, really. So he's got to explain it, which is we're going to send our troops into Latin America or wherever we have to and crush those people who are threatening us. That's what I'm going to send them a memo when we're done here and say, don't Monroe Doctrine. Yes, those old people sitting there, they remember what that means, but you got to send them that remember the Maine, and there are a couple.
Good Lord. Yeah.
Out there.
To me, it just means the Western Hemisphere, we own it. I mean, that's our purview. I mean, don't you touch anything over here on this side of the earth, basically, and we're coming after you. That's what he means. Let me put this up on screen now. This is we're going to run through the GOP candidates. You can jump in here anytime that you want to, Doc, but these are the people, and I'm going to give the Register for props covering this. My God, I'd hate to think that I was sitting out in the sun shooting pictures and covering these guys at the State Fair. Asa Hutchinson. This is this libertarian guy that I was talking about earlier that I don't know too much about libertarians. They seem to be the me party. That's the way I look at them. This is a guy, Representative Will Hurd. He's a Republican running for president. He's announced. There's Mike Pence, who is fallen like a stone because the Republicans right now are owned by Trump, and he's no big favorite of theirs. This is GOP presidential candidate Ryan Binkley.
Yeah.
Yeah. Tim Scott, of course, we've heard of, and there he is with there's our governor. I won't get into that. Nikki Haley at one point was thought of pretty well. Don't hear much about Nikki Haley anymore. There's DeSantis. And he seems to be kind of going at best sideways and maybe declining in popularity. And there's Trump, and honest to God, this man that is in so much trouble under indictment and the subject of so many lawsuits and held responsible and his words dissected in that January 6th issue. And he walks around waving his fist in the air. You talk about optics. I would not recommend that. And then here's Robert Kennedy, just to kind of round out the candidates that I wanted to talk about today. And I'll give my perspective on him that's a little bit different than most folks, Doc. And I mentioned the fact that he's got a very strange perspective on the deep state. He believes that the CIA was moving around behind the scenes in the assassination of his uncle and even his father. Mm-hmm. And if you believe that, your entire perspective of everything in this country has got to be subject to question. I don't belong to that conspiracy camp, but he does. He wants to say that he's not an anti-vaxxer, but he literally leaps off the stage almost to talk about anti-vaxxing issues. It's like the fair lady doth protest too much, methinks. I mean, no, I'm not an anti-vaxxer, but man, let me talk for an hour about it. I mean, that's what he does. And I'm resentful of him because he does have a good perspective on anti-war, but at the same time, he's got a crazy perspective on Israel and Palestine. And the way that I put it with people, folks, is my own perspective. Little old redneck George here in Iowa, growing up the way that I grew up. If some Jordanian Palestinian or something like that named Sirhan had blown off my father's head in the kitchen of a hotel in Los Angeles, you wouldn't want me elected president, Doc, and overseeing the Israeli-Palestine issue. I felt the same way about John McCain when he was running for president. I didn't want him elected because he'd spent 5.5 years as a prisoner of war. I said, if that was me when I got out, You wouldn't want me elected president of the United States. Now, those are just, that's just me. That's not those guys, but that's why, and I only have me as a reference point. That's why I'm not supporting Robert F. Kennedy. It's why I didn't support John McCain and those people. But I don't know. That's a little off the rails, but is it crazy, Doc?
You've had 3 cups of coffee this morning.
Yeah.
But you showed us you didn't show us the poll, which was Donald Trump 42%, the latest Iowa poll.
That's coming up.
Yep. Well, when you bring that one up, then I will make a comment.
All right, let me go to this. Now, this is how every GOP presidential candidate performed with likely caucus goers in this new Iowa poll. Now, and I got to mention this. This is copyright. This is from the Des Moines Register, NBC News, Mediacom Iowa poll. They want to be credited, and rightfully so.
Yeah.
When we look at the Iowa poll, although I will say polls have kind of fallen into disrepute, and rightfully so after 2016. They're fluid. They change. You really ought to trust them about 2 days before the election, it seems like. But here's an early one when it comes to the 2024 presidential election. Former President Donald Trump holds a lead of more than 2-1 in Iowa over Florida Governor Ron DeSantis in the 2024 presidential race among likely Republican caucus goers. But results of the Des Moines Register poll show DeSantis does have a lane in Iowa. His Iowa footprint is 2 percentage points behind Trump, 61% to 63%. Well, okay, what's a footprint, you ask? The footprint is measured by adding together those who say the candidate is their first choice for president and those who say the candidate is their second choice and those who are actively considering supporting the candidate. That sounds vaguely similar to ranked choice voting to me, Doc, but I think what they're thinking here is if Trump doesn't make it through, if Trump maybe goes to jail as an example, those same people that are supporting Trump are saying, if I don't have him to vote for, I'm voting for DeSantis. Is that the way that you read that?
Well, I think that's what it is. And, I mean, there are 1,000 possibilities, as you and I have talked. But when I look at, and I'm looking right here at the little table of that, and it is a fantastic poll, and Ann Seltzer is a terrific pollster in the Des Moines Register and the other groups that participated and funded this poll. They give us something to talk about. It is a snapshot. You're right. It's a snapshot right now when they took the poll. It may not still be tomorrow if one of these people suddenly, becomes sick or dies or something happens. But it is at this moment, as a friend of mine said, it's 9 midgets, 1 elephant, and a one. And
and a one what?
I'm sorry, and small people. I like small people. I have a former student of mine, wonderful person, and she said, I don't mind being called a midget. I know I'm going to get hate mail. Guys can send it to George, please. Yeah. But I don't answer that mail. So there are people there who have 0% in this poll. And as I said to the terrific reporter from The Guardian, you have to remember that people run in the primaries and the Iowa caucuses for many reasons. Some of them are because they hope they might win or come in 1, 2, or 3, and then go on to become candidate of the party. The other reason is ego. It's just terrific. They can tell their friends, I'm running for president. They get media attention. The third reason is that they are grooming themselves and positioning themselves for positions in the next administration, perhaps, or in a governor's office, because they got visibility and they might become an ambassador. They may become a cabinet member. So it's a good way to build your resume for the next job. The other and final reason should not be overlooked. All the media except you and I right now overlook this. And the guy at The Guardian said, oh, I never thought of that. Or he said, no, I've never thought of that. And that is, you get a lot of money. Even if you're down there and your name is Asa Hutchinson or Perry Johnson, somebody is going to give you some money who wants to be in good with you or likes you or is a relative or something. So you get a bunch of money. And very often you keep that money after you lost the caucuses, the primaries, and certainly the election. And then you can give it to other people and still play with it. You can take trips, political trips that are still part of this. So there's a lot of money that gets shoveled at people running for president. Those are all reasons why people come to Iowa to run in the caucuses. And we allow them to. All these people are allowed to go out there and say, I'm running for president, even though everybody thinks that they have no chance of becoming dog catcher in Iowa, much less a candidate for president. But there are other good reasons why they're doing it.
How much of it is ego? How much of it is they're too dumb, or are they in on it? All these presidents come out, and do they really believe that they're going to make this big of a difference and change things dramatically? Because even their policies and programs that they put forth aren't major changes in my book a lot of times, and the Republicans are a good example of that. A lot of them profess to be fans of Donald Trump. He wasn't able to make the kind of changes that a lot of people thought that his supporters anyway had thought that he was going to make, or that he lied about, promised that he was going to do. Biden hasn't been able to change things the way a lot of his supporters wanted him to change it. Do they really believe that they're going to be able to make those changes? Because that's one of my criticisms of electoral politics and presidential elections in particular. People have these wildly exaggerated hopes and dreams of these everlasting, permanent, massive changes in America. They just don't happen, Doc.
Yeah, they do. They happen, George. Look at the Supreme Court. If Donald Trump had not gotten elected president, and if, that had gone on with 3 more appointments to the Supreme Court would not be this conservative. Abortion would still be legal, and Roe v. Wade would still be the law of the country.
But Biden,
this one big thing, you got all that list of stuff that they promise you, free gasoline and, a house in Malibu Beach and, 2 new smartphones or what. None of that. But if you come through with 1, 2, or 3 things that you promised, that's good enough. And Donald Trump cut taxes on wealthy people. That's a huge, huge success.
Yeah, that's one thing he did do. Yep.
So there are a lot of things. And Biden, he may not have done all the things, and certainly the things that you want, which is to reverse climate change and make the earth safe again. He didn't do that. Can't be done. But he did a hell of a lot of other things, smaller things every week that, some people benefited from. And we forget, that's all you can do. When you're president, you don't have that much power. You're not the emperor. And many of the things that you promised to do can't be done anyway because they're just impossible to do. So do a few things, and enough people. The problem with Biden is that his administration hasn't been able to explain some of the things that they've done. I mean, the economy is back on keel. We're not in a war anywhere. We were in a war all those years, Afghanistan and Iraq, and before that, Vietnam and things like that. So we're not in a war. I know that you're worried about us getting into a war and what we're doing in some places in the world, but right now we're not. And so he could be, selling some of those things, but he's really terrible at trying to communicate and sell his policies. And, that's an advantage for the Republicans because Ramaswamy is very good at explaining what he would do.
Yeah, and I don't want to talk too much here about Biden because we've got to get to these other things. But what I would say is that you're going to get Joe Biden, like it or not. I'll never forget going to the Iowa caucuses in 2020 and how unpopular he was. But that's who the DNC, the Democratic Party, wanted. You're going to get him, like it or not. The question is, for me, whether or not Robert F. Kennedy is going to fall in line, as he did with Hillary endorsing her and with Biden, or whether or not he's going to try to dig his heels in and do something to get real change on some of those issues that he's so concerned about. I don't know the answer to that one, but I wanted to spin back here to the Republicans and look at this pie chart, Doc, because this one I entitled was going to vote against the Democrats. This is the Des Moines Register, NBC News, Mediacom Iowa poll again that the Doc explained. Most likely GOP caucus goers could be persuaded to caucus for someone other than their first choice. Now, I look at this one and again, maybe cynically, Doc, and to me, this says, yeah, okay, I'd go with another Republican, but I'm going to vote against Biden. I'm going to take the Republican Party and whoever the nominee is, and I'm going to go with that. And right now it's Trump, it looks like, but that's my choice. So this is electoral politics in America. I'm fully prepared to vote against someone as opposed to being totally devoted to anyone. Is that the way you read this?
Yeah, and it's I think it's good that people are thinking, could be persuaded, their minds aren't closed. I don't know if but Trump is so far ahead, and nothing seems to, he is a Teflon candidate, and that's what we used to talk about Ronald Reagan and some others. And of course, something could come up. Health issues do come up and things like that. And then they would be persuaded to vote for, who knows who else. But, the field is big. It's too big. Makes it tough for people to sort things out. But then I've been to the grocery store and I know that, some people buy that cereal on the top shelf that's made out of coconut and cocoa and something else. I don't buy that, but some people might buy that. So in America, you want lots of cereal on the shelf. You want lots of candidates out there. And the Democrats had that the last time. There were lots and lots of Democrats. And, Biden didn't do very well in Iowa, and that's fine. Now he's angry at Iowa and loves South Carolina and has taken away the caucuses from Iowa, has taken away the New Hampshire primary first place. I think he's going to pay for that. I'll be honest with you. I think a lot of people here where I'm in New Hampshire today, and the chair of the Democratic Party in New Hampshire is fuming mad, on fire, because they don't have the legally required second place in the country, which is 1 week after the first event, which is the Iowa caucuses. They're angry at Biden, and I wouldn't be surprised if some of them will go and vote rogue just to stick it to him. And I'm not sure in Iowa if some Democrats also are not very angry at the DNC and at Biden for taking away the first in the nation caucuses, which we've talked about enough.
Well, and again, we're talking about Republicans because the Iowa poll here, this is what it's dealing with. There are going to be subsequent articles on this or reveals, but let's take a look at this one here. This is nearly 2/3. Again, the Des Moines Register, NBC News, Mediacom Iowa poll reports that nearly 2/3 of likely Republican caucus goers believe that Trump has not committed any serious crimes. Nearly 2/3, Doc.
Yep.
Surprised?
It's all fake news. It's all the swamp, the left-wing Democrats and the FBI and the Justice Department trying to stick it to Trump. There is a lack of trust in those institutions now. And, I'm not surprised. No, I'm not surprised because, if you tell people these are bad people that are doing this, and this guy is the target and the victim, and these are the reason why shouldn't they, think, no, he probably didn't do any of those things. It's just an effort to stop him from getting reelected. Not surprising.
Yeah, and on the Democratic side, I look at the decision by the DNC not to have debates. As I mentioned, Biden is their guy. There's no reason to do it. You're going to get him, like it or not. Well, look at this, Doc. This came out just yesterday, a confirmation of what everybody suspected. Here, everybody wants to talk about democracy and our way of doing things. Trump says he's going to skip the presidential primary debates, and his perspective is kind of the same way. Former President Donald Trump confirmed Sunday, just yesterday, that he will be skipping Wednesday's first Republican presidential primary debate and others as well. Quote, "The public knows who I am and what a successful presidency I had," Trump wrote on his social media site. "I will therefore not be doing the debates." His spokesman did not immediately clarify whether he plans to boycott every primary debate or just those that currently have been scheduled. What do you think? That's probably a good political strategy, but what do you think about the optics, Doc?
It's not only a good political strategy. I said to a friend of mine who is a very wealthy campaign contributor down there in the South, um, you know, I mean, debates, those were things that you did back before there was electricity, before there was a telephone, a radio, a TV, or any other way of communicating to people except maybe a local newspaper. We live in a media age where every American can go and find out what every one of these candidates stands for, how they look, how they speak. You can Google it. You can do it on social media. You can watch podcasts by George and get a lot of more information here than you can from a bunch of guys posturing up on a stage, yelling at each other and doing pretend stuff. Debates are all fake and fraud. They're all fraud. You're prepped by your speaker trainer. All the campaigns have someone who trains you for the debate. Say this, don't say that. You're not getting a genuine candidate up there. You're getting an actor.
Yeah.
So I don't think debates are worth anything. Most people don't watch them, and I think they're not worth watching unless you want to see Donald Trump calling somebody little this or stupid that. And it's great entertainment, and so it's too bad he's not going to be on the stage, because I might watch it to see him insult all the other midgets on there. And honestly, debates are obsolete. Get over it,
Especially in this age. And the point that you made, Donna Brazile admitted that she fed questions to Hillary Clinton. I mean, before the one debate, my God, you talk about an advantage. And the people that are good with the medium, that are good on stage, going all the way back to Ronald Reagan, they tend to be the ones that do well. And it isn't a good thing. I give you an example. I interview television personalities, electronic medium personalities all the time, Doc. Well, I interview some of the best, most thoughtful, insightful, brilliant print people as well, people that make their living with the printed word. Well, those people are a little slower, a little more considered, a little less glib. It takes them longer to put their thoughts together, I think, because they're kind of composing in their head like they would with the printed word. But you'd make a huge mistake if you didn't consider those people at least as much as the people that are good with the electronic media, because you're good on a debate stage or good on television, like Ramaswamy as an example. That doesn't mean that you're good at anything else. I mean, don't confuse the two, but we seem to get very confused at times, Doc.
Well, it's true. And sadly, people have moved away from newspapers. Every once in a while, there's a newspaper that just blows it away and people go nuts and love it. And we realize how important local newspapers are when the police raid a newspaper and take away all their computers and phones and go to the home of the owner and sit there until she has a heart attack.
Yeah.
And we realize we have newspapers like that in Iowa, and they are hugely important because they have their finger on the pulse of, down on the grassroots, but they are less important now than social media and television and cable and all this stuff. So the debates, I'm not a fan of debates, frankly. I'm not. I mean, what it shows you is, if somebody is good at debating, they're good at debating. That's what it shows you, nothing else. And Donald Trump would be foolish to go to those debates. He's, almost 50% ahead in the polls. Why would he put himself equal to somebody down at the bottom of the list? I can read the names, but it's embarrassing, because I don't want to embarrass those guys, and even women. I think there's only one woman running in the Republican. Why would they're equal when he is up here and they are? You see my fingers down here?
Yeah, I see it. Yeah.
Here. He is up here. Why would he come down here and debate them? Blah, 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 blah. Yeah, I mean, I think it's a smart move, and nobody cares if the Republican National Committee feels insulted or if Fox feels insulted because he's not coming to their little debate. Nobody cares, really.
Yeah, I'd have to, and again, it has to do with the mastery of the medium and the fact that he got to where he is. I think because of it, people recognized or knew him from television, The Apprentice. He'd been all over media in New York and the major metropolitan population centers for decades. I mean, he's good with that. So we got that guy. I look at how the hell did he get through? Well, that's how he gets on. I mean, people look at that and they're impressed by it, Doc.
But also, he is going to be on the night of the debate explaining his position on issues, but he's not going to be on the debate.
The stage
He's
itself.
going to be
Yeah.
on Tucker Carlson interviewing him, and he's going to be on other media. And because of that, a lot of people are probably going to skip over to that other medium to see what he had to say. You know,
I would recommend it. I think Tucker might be kind of hard on him. I think that might be worth watching. I mean, Tucker is not a big fan of Trump on a lot of things. I mean, it'll be interesting to see if he leans on him or not. Yeah.
I lean on him a little bit, but there are bodyguards standing behind the curtain. You don't want to lean
never forget that.
Don't lean too hard. Tucker, you're a nice guy. Stay calm. Don't listen to George. You may end up with a bad oyster.
This is great. I mean, I love this. It's funny, tragically funny in a lot of respects, but this is what he's good at. I mean, Doc can put politics in a way, can put it in a format that is digestible, that you'll want to understand and learn from. Doc, we're out of time here. I want to give you the last word, as always, to kind of wrap this up. Put a bow on this particular edition of the Live Line.
Well, I do think that this election is going to be one of the most important, certainly in my lifetime, and maybe in modern history, because we are a deeply divided country with two very old individuals who could have serious health problems, where the vice president of that person is going to be, as many say about Biden, but it's true of Trump as well. Who's going to be Trump's vice president? It could be a succession. We've had that before, where presidents get sick or die on the job. So this is a crucial election. I think there's going to be a little bit of violence. I'm beginning to get a little sense that people are not going to go out on the streets with their guns, depending on the outcome. Hopefully not. But it is going to be a crucial election. And so I'm not watching the debates because I don't have time. I'm going to be on the road and they're boring. But I am going to definitely be interested in how that election rolls out.
A couple of quick hitters based on what you just said. We didn't talk about turnout. Now, I've heard you talk about how important that is. I mean, are things at such a fever pitch about these politics in America that we're going to see a big turnout, or are people just going to get disgusted and sickened by all this and stay away? Do you have a sense for that this time?
You shared with me, I think, a figure: 100 million people don't vote.
Yeah.
In elections.
Yeah.
That's half the voters.
Yes.
Who are eligible and just don't vote. And this year, the enthusiasm for Biden is not great. The enthusiasm for Donald Trump is not great. It's not great. Yeah. When you look at what people are saying, and even Republicans are saying, oh my God, can he get reelected? We don't know. We don't think so. I think a lot of people are going to be depressed on election night if they have two people to vote for that they're not enthusiastic about, frankly. So I think it is not going to be, I think, a on fire election.
How about voting against the other side? That can be a motivating factor. No, not the same. Yeah,
it could be. I mean, the Republicans are doing a great job stirring up their base and others against Biden, pretending, as you do, that he's a monster who hasn't achieved anything and who should be put on a Russian moon landing rocket and sent to the lunar pole. Oh no, that's already happened. And if he had been on that, he would be dead. Yeah, I don't know.
Well,
I think Putin is not happy this morning. I can tell you that. After the embarrassment of the landing crash.
I saw that. Yeah, smashed into the surface. Yeah.
Yep.
Well, and we've been talking about the Republicans mostly because that's what this Iowa poll early release is about. We'll circle back and talk more about the Democrats. I've got a wild card that I love to talk about, Dr. Cornel West. We haven't talked about that. He's polling, I think, at about 5-6%. He could be a factor there on the Democratic side with the lefties. One final question, Doc. Trump. You've been around a long time. You've watched this stuff for a hell of a long time. Is he going to jail?
No.
No.
I don't think so. No American president in history has gone to jail. Who wants to take the responsibility for doing that this time around? And that could really set off a
Uh,
tremendous amount of violence. I mean,
mm,
everyone in this country has a gun.
yeah, a
Well,
machine gun.
I can
Yeah,
bring it's in the closet over
yeah.
there.
We're not
Uh,
talking a squirrel popper. Folks got some heavy artillery in this country, boy.
artillery right here.
Shit.
I don't go to the door with my gun in my hand like that idiot that wanted to kill Biden. I don't know if you saw that or not, but
Mm. Oh, yeah.
he showed up at the door when the cops came because he was harassing some utility workers with his gun,
Yeah.
and he wouldn't put it down, finally put it down. And then he went outside, and the cops were talking to him really nice, and he said, "Oh," he said, I have a sniper rifle in my house," right in the face of one of the cops, and they said, "Oh, don't say that."
Yeah.
Then later he tried to plot something against Biden, and they came and they had to shoot him, kill him. Well, when you have a gun, be very careful. I don't go to the door with mine.
Yeah.
I don't. I have it very close by, but not in my hand.
Yeah, good for you, Doug. All right. Like I always say, the guns last forever. Nuts have always been with us, and we're stuck with what we've got when it comes to that issue until somebody figures out something different. I mean, I don't know what to
I'm a
tell you.
very peaceful man.
Yeah.
You know that. I'm very peaceful.
Yeah, me too, Doug. Peace and love. That's me, baby. That's what I want to vote for, too. And I ain't seen much of an opportunity here of late. We're going to let him go, folks, because we're out of time. Folks, that's Dr. Steffen W. Schmidt, the political science professor emeritus, Lucan endowed professor from Iowa State University. Doc, thanks for coming on Podcast by George.
Thank you.
Yeah, and you talk about far-ranging and far, and we talked about a lot of things today, and I hope folks like seeing these types of perspectives and these viewpoints that you're not hearing a lot of places. I know you don't get perspectives like mine very often, and the doc kind of, he's kind of an even keel kind of guy that'll reel me in once in a while. But if you like seeing this, go to podcastbygeorge.com and you can subscribe to get every time the doc's on. You'll see, you'll get a notification if you subscribe on YouTube. If you ring the notification bell on YouTube, and if you give us a thumbs up there, you'll get notification of these live streams. Same thing on Facebook. Just follow us there with a thumbs up, I think, and you'll be notified on Facebook when the video live streams release. Now, you can also subscribe to the audio podcast on podcastbygeorge.com. That's the easiest way to do it. Don't go searching around on Stitcher and Deezer and all those crazies. Just go to podcastbygeorge.com. Click on the icon for those places, including iTunes, Spotify, the iHeartRadio app, Amazon Music. Click the button. It'll take you right there, and you can subscribe that way. That's what I always recommend at the end of Podcast by George. But, folks, that's going to do it. That's going to wrap it up. That's all there is. And there ain't no more. That's another Podcast by George.